It's wild how one quick comment, one tiny moment, can suddenly feel like a clue to something much bigger. That's exactly. It didn't mean much at the time, but weeks later looked like a quiet warning of what was coming. Nicole Kidman may have been the one who filed for divorce, but the story behind the scenes suggests Keith had already taken a step back long before anyone realized. And the more you look at the timeline, the more it feels like the end of their relationship wasn't a sudden decision. It was a slow unraveling that had been quietly building in the background. For years, Keith and Nicole were held up as one of Hollywood's strongest couples. They looked polished, elegant, and completely in sync. Red carpets, vacations, award shows, everything appeared effortless from the outside. But relationships don't fall apart overnight, and sometimes the cracks don't show until someone finally stops pretending. Their split on September 29th shocked fans everywhere, especially because nothing publicly suggested trouble. Yet behind the scenes, both of them knew this moment was coming, and one small comment Keith made on tour might have been the clearest sign of all. The turning point happened on September 15th during Keith's concert stop in Saskatoon, Canada. This wasn't a dramatic moment or a big emotional confession. Instead, it was a simple interaction with a fan named Dale Whiteside, someone who just happened to look a lot like Keith. Dale had run into Urban before the show and mentioned that people often confused the two of them. But then he said something that hit deeper than he expected. He explained that people usually figure out he's not Keith because he doesn't have tattoos and he doesn't wear a wedding ring. It was a harmless comment, a joke really, but Keith's response changed everything. Next time, it'll probably be just the tattoos, he told him. At the time, the remark felt light, almost playful. But once the divorce news broke, the meaning shifted. Suddenly, it didn't sound like a joke at all. It sounded like someone who had already accepted that the ring wasn't part of his identity anymore. Someone who knew the next chapter of his life was already unfolding, even if the public hadn't caught on. When Urban fans heard this quote after the divorce filing, the internet lit up. People were asking the same question. How long had Keith been hinting at this? Had he been preparing himself emotionally long before Nicole actually filed the paperwork? And why did a moment that once felt insignificant suddenly sound like a quiet admission that things were ending? Rumors quickly surfaced claiming Keith had privately felt their marriage had reached its natural endpoint. Not a scandal, not a dramatic blow-up, just two people who slowly drifted apart after nearly 2 decades together. Reports claimed he had been thinking about his next chapter weeks before anyone else knew. Not confirmed, of course, but the timeline makes the speculation feel hard to ignore. But this wasn't just about one strange comment. Their marriage, according to insiders, had been slowly changing for years. They were two people with incredibly demanding careers, constantly traveling, constantly working, constantly pulled in different directions. Nicole filmed multiple projects back-to-back, while Keith spent months on tour across the world. There were stretches where they barely lived in the same city. And while they always spoke publicly about trust and connection, fans began noticing small shifts, the distance between them on red carpets, the fewer appearances together, the quieter social media presence. Sources close to the couple later said the breakup wasn't sudden at all. It was a long time coming, something both had seen approaching but hadn't addressed publicly. They'd grown in different directions, with different priorities, and neither wanted to force something that no longer felt authentic. There wasn't a dramatic betrayal or explosive fight, just two people who reached the quiet conclusion that staying together wasn't right anymore. Still, the most surprising part remains Keith's behavior leading up to the announcement. Once that fan conversation resurfaced, people started looking back through interviews and social media posts. Some fans noted he seemed more reflective in recent months, posting fewer personal moments and focusing heavily on music. Others felt his tone during performances had shifted, more emotional, almost nostalgic. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, but subtle clues that something inside him had changed. There were also whispers, unverified but widely circulated, that Keith had been emotionally preparing for the split even while Nicole was still weighing her options. Reports claim he had been talking to people close to him about how life might look after the marriage, almost as though he was accepting it months before anything became official. These claims remain speculation, but when you line them up with everything else, the puzzle pieces fit in a strangely neat way. What makes everything more complicated is the fact that Nicole ultimately filed the legal paperwork. To the public, it looked like she initiated the breakup, but sources later suggested the decision may have been mutual, even if she was the one who took the formal step. Filing first doesn't always mean ending first. It often means one person simply took responsibility for the logistics. And in this case, insiders insist that both Keith and Nicole had known for a long time that the relationship had simply run its course. After the announcement, things moved quickly. Reports began circulating that Keith was open to dating again, not rushing, not diving into anything dramatic, but simply being open to the possibility of meeting someone new. For a man who had been married nearly 20 years, that shift alone was huge. Fans reacted with a mix of shock, sadness, and curiosity. Some wondered if he had emotionally detached earlier than anyone realized. Others believed he was simply ready to move forward after years of quietly watching the relationship fade. What's interesting is that Keith hasn't made any big public statements about the split. He stayed mostly silent, focusing on music and touring. Some believe the silence itself speaks volumes, that he doesn't want a public battle or finger-pointing. Others think it reflects a man who had already grieved the end long before the papers were filed. Meanwhile, Nicole has kept her privacy intact, offering no detailed explanation about what triggered the final decision. For a couple who always seemed united, the quietness around the breakup only adds to the mystery. People close to them have said there were many attempts to hold things together, but sometimes even the strongest partnerships can't survive the pressure of time, distance, and different paths. Their careers were both thriving, but thriving in opposite directions. Nicole's acting commitments took her around the world. Keith's music career kept him constantly traveling across the world. There were stretches where they barely lived in the same city. And while they always spoke publicly about trust and connection, fans began noticing small shifts, the distance between them on red carpets, the fewer appearances together, the quieter social media presence. And when Keith made that offhand remark about the tattoos being the only thing left to distinguish him from a look-alike, maybe that was one of those moments. Not a joke, not a throwaway line, but a glimpse into a man who had already accepted that his relationship was ending. The more you revisit the events leading up to the divorce, the clearer the pattern becomes. His touring schedule, his quieter interviews, his comment to the fan, and the near immediate openness toward possibly dating again, it all points to someone who had processed the end long before the rest of us knew it was happening. Nothing scandalous, nothing explosive, just quiet acceptance. But the real question, the one fans continue to debate, is when did the emotional split truly begin? Was it months before the paperwork? Years? Was Keith the first to pull away, or did both of them gradually drift until the distance became too big to ignore? Their silence leaves room for endless speculation, and because neither has chosen to publicly detail the ending, people are left piecing together small clues from comments, timelines, and moments that now feel heavier in hindsight. As the dust settles, the only thing certain is that their divorce didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual, quiet unraveling, marked by subtle hints that only make sense now. That one fan interaction, once nothing more than a passing joke, became a strange timestamp in the story of their final months together, a reminder that even the smallest moments can reveal the biggest truths. And now, with both of them stepping into new phases of their lives, fans are left wondering what the future looks like for each of them. Keith seems ready to move forward. Nicole remains focused on her work. Their paths, once intertwined so beautifully, now run separately once again. And while the public didn't see the ending coming, those closest to them say it was simply the natural next step, one that had been quietly building long before the world found out.